Welcome class 10 students. So this is the first class where we take off our ICSE syllabus in preparation for your board exams of 2021. You have the play The Merchant of Venice. You have 10 poems. You have 10 stories. I am going to start your syllabus and preparation with the poems. And before I begin, let me tell you that out of the 10 poems, one poem, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, is no longer in your syllabus for 2021 because the COVID pandemic had forced the council to reduce the syllabus. Now, we will have to first take a stock of what has come in 2019, what has come in 2020, and what is likely to come in 2021. Now, in 2019, the poems which had come are After Blenheim, The Patriot, and 9 gold medals. We will have to do them. There is a chance that they might be repeated or one of them might be repeated. In 2020, this year we had The Bangle Sellers, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, and Abu Ben Adam. These three you can skip for your preparation. Poems are generally never repeated in successive years. So we are now left with 4 poems in your ICSE which are yet untouched. They are The Heart of the Tree, The Cold Within, Daffodils, and Television. And out of these 4, I have decided to start with Daffodils. Now, first of all, let us get introduced to the poem first. The first thing you should remember is this poem is a lyric. This poem is a lyric. This poem was originally titled according to the first line of the poem. What is the first line of the poem? I wandered lonely as a cloud. But this title was later changed into Daffodils. Now imagine that on 15th of April 1802, the poet William Wordsworth, along with his sister Dorothy Wordsworth, were in the Lake District of England, and they were near the Ullswater Lake, Lake Ullswater. Imagine, Wordsworth was roaming around, wandering around aimlessly on the banks of Lake Ullswater. And as he was moving around aimlessly, wandering here and there, he saw these daffodils blooming by the side of the lake. They were innumerable in number. They were plenty in number. They were thousands in number. All yellow daffodil flowers. Now you must be careful. In ICSE, if you are asked to guess the season, you will write it was the season of spring. First of all, it was April, and secondly, spring is the season for the blooming of flowers, especially daffodils. And the lake around which Wordsworth was roaming around was Ullswater Lake. And this becomes the basis of this poem, Daffodils. Now, what kind of a poet was Wordsworth? Wordsworth was a romantic poet. Now, what is the meaning of romanticism here? Romanticism means love for Mother Nature. Here, romanticism does not mean love affair with a boy or a girl. It means love for Mother Nature. Anything that is beautiful and attractive in Mother Nature is romanticism. That is why I have written, for Wordsworth, a thing of beauty is a joy forever. Anything beautiful in nature was a constant source of pleasure, joy, and happiness for Wordsworth. That is the theory of romanticism. A beautiful object in Mother Nature is not only a pleasure to look at, but it gives an experience of joy and happiness that lasts throughout the life. This is the importance of the philosophy of Wordsworth. When you look at something beautiful, it gives you joy, happiness, pleasure. It's very, very soothing to your eyes to look at. But the important thing is, the picture of that beautiful object stays in your memory, and many years later, when you recall that picture, when you remember that picture in your imagination or mind, it gives you the same feeling of joy, happiness, and pleasure as it had given you when you had seen that object for the first time. That is romanticism. That is Wordsworth's philosophy. He says that many years later, when he would be alone, feeling lonely and sad, the picture or image of the beautiful yellow daffodils will come back to his memory. The memory, the remembrance of the daffodils will remove the loneliness and sadness of the poet and fill his heart with joy and happiness. This is stated in the last stanza of the poem, and that is the basis of Wordsworth's philosophy. Later in his life, when he will be in a thoughtful, pensive, sad, sorrowful, gloomy mood, sitting alone somewhere, the memory of the beautiful daffodils will come back to his mind, and that will remove the loneliness, that will remove the pensive mood, the gloominess, the sadness, the sorrow, and will fill his heart with the joy, pleasure, and happiness that he had felt when he had seen the daffodils many years before. That is romanticism of William Wordsworth. Now, as we do the poem, obviously, I will come across the meanings, the explanations, the figures of speech. So let us start with the poem. I wandered lonely as a cloud. In the first line, let me tell you, there is a figure of speech, simile, S-I-M-I-L-E, because there is a comparison. Whenever you have a comparison using the words like or as, the figure of speech is called simile. Now, what is the explanation here for that figure of speech? I told you in the beginning, the poet Wordsworth was roaming around aimlessly, wandering around aimlessly on the banks of the Ullswater Lake. He is imagining that just as a piece or a speck of cloud floats and moves in the sky alone, similarly, he was moving and roaming around and wandering alone along the banks of the Ullswater Lake. So the comparison is between a lonely speck or piece of cloud floating across the sky to the lonely poet moving around and wandering on the banks of the Ullswater Lake. That is the simile. The I is obviously the poet, the narrator. Wandered meaning moved aimlessly. I wandered lonely as a cloud. The poet one day was moving or walking around aimlessly, just as a cloud floats or moves along across the sky, over valleys and hills. That is the simile. That floats on high over vales and hills. Just as a speck of cloud floats over valleys and hills, similarly the poet was wandering along the banks of the Ullswater Lake.